Hello ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to materials, we will have to add materials in our geometry node setup. So I'm going to make here 4 different materials, 1, 2, 3, 4, to click new. And I'm going to rename all these materials. This is called wood handle. This is called connector. Actually, the connector and the rim are going to be the same. So I don't need so many materials. I'm going to delete one and call this just class. Now I will Shift A, search, set material, and I'm going to set the material for every piece I have. Here I'm going to click it, put here class, set material, this is rim, so it's going to be just a shiny material connector. And again, this is going to be my handle, so it is going to be a wooden material. Give here this one, a wood handle and material connector. And there we go. We have connector material on these both. Here we got glass and here we got our wooden handle. Now we go to our shading tab and we start out by making a noise texture. Shift A, noise texture. Connect it into the base color and we see how it looks like. Now it looks a bit odd, so I'm going to stretch it out by adding here a mapping and a texture coordinate node. We can do it fast if we have Node Wrangler add-on enabled, so we can just press Ctrl T and we get both of these. I'm also going to add here a color ramp in between so I can see better what's happening there. Shift A, search, color ramp, boom. Now I'm going to just pull the sliders so I see how my noise looks like, and I'm going to stretch my noise out a bit. Also, I'm going to use object mapping on my object. Looks something like this. Out there. So now I'm going to stretch it out a bit in all kind of angles to get it look good all around, so it doesn't have this funny artifacts there. I'm going for some kind of oldish colored wood stuff. We see we can always change these parameters afterwards. I'm going to scale up my noise a bit more, and I'm also going to give it some roughness. Maybe put some detail. Now if I put detail, you will notice that I get more detailed noise here. It's like layers. Now I got this basic pattern here. I'm going to give some colors to it, but just adding some colors to a color ramp, like maybe some kind of brownish color here, maybe a little bit darker one here. You can always play around with colors and get the desired result. I will add another one, a third one, a color, make it a dark brown or maybe. And you can always change these as well. You can slide these around to get the result you like. For me, it looks like it's a little bit too light. So I'm going to add in RGB curves. And now I can just drag this down a bit and it's going to be darker. Just click here, it adds a point and I will pull it down So it is going to be a little bit darker. Maybe I should stretch it more out a bit. Maybe something like this will work. Now I'm going to also add a bump map to it, which is generated from noise, the same noise that we use here. So I'm just going to add in a bump map. Bump node bump, connect black and white information into the height map, and connect it into the normal output. Now I'm going to add in a roughness map, which is also same as this noise texture there. And it is too strong at the moment, so I'm going to lower the value. Add in color ramp to control the roughness. Add it into roughness, so now I'm controlling roughness here. And you will see as it gets less shiny and more shiny. If I Ctrl Shift click on it, having Node Wrangler add-on enabled, I can see which places will shine more and which less. Black will be shinier and white will be less shiny. As I see, I inverted the colors because I wanted this part to be more shiny. Maybe a little bit less. Like this maybe. You can always tweak it like you like it. Now, I think we're quite done with our handle part, so I'm moving on to this shiny metal part here. Going to the second part. Shiny metal material is going to be quite easy one. Where is this connector part? Because we're just adding it a gray value, and then IOR, which is silver. So IOR, I looked it up, silver IOR 1.2, and I'm going to add it gray material. And also I'm going to tell the program that it's made out of metal. And lower the roughness value, we get it more shinier, something like this maybe. Now our third object was glass, so I'm going to just add a glass to it. Glass material, just delete the principled node, pressing X and Shift A, search glass. Going to connect it on the surface, and also I'm going to play around with an IOR for the glass. I found out that 1.1 or something like this works best for me for a magnification effect, but when it doesn't work for you, you can always play around with this value, so it is going to magnify our objects. Now this is done for this basic texturing part, and now we're going to build up our scene. If I want to have these images like I had on the thumbnail scene, I'm going to import images as planes. Front view by pressing 1, Shift A, search image as a mesh plane, and I'm going to select all my 3 images and import as planes. Now I got these images in, I got 3 images here. I'm going to take one image here, and I'm going to change the material a bit. I'm going to change it called paper. Going to connect it back. On these papers, I wanted to have a bump map, and so I'm going to add in a bump node, and I'm going to connect in a noise, again, noise texture. I'm going to make the noise very big, so it looks like it's a little bit rough. Something like this should do it, and adding in some roughness. You can always look what you're doing. If it's too strong, you can lower the bump value. Something like this should do it. Just that you see it only a little bit, because this is definitely too strong. Just a little bit so it looks rough. I'm also going to add some stains to it, like coffee stains or something like this. So I'm going to mix a noise texture with this image texture. Now Shift A, search, noise again, noise texture, and I'm going to put them together by pressing Ctrl Shift and right click and dragging it over like this. Now mix, I'm going to turn it up factor 1, so it is going to multiply it times 1 and multiply. Now I only have these 2 pages where I can't see a big difference and it's overlapping it like this. But if I wanted to look through, then I have to add a color ramp. So added in the color ramp and just playing around with the values, how you like the stains, and probably you want to have them really big and maybe not so dark. Just a little bit of effect here. Now I got this main paper material done. Ctrl Shift click on it, and now it looks like this. I'm going to actually give this same material, the paper material, because I don't want to redo the setup, and I'm just going to click this number 2, so it indicates that it's now a separate material where I can actually delete this main texture, drag and drop in the new one, and just put it there. I got here a third texture, and the same thing here. I'm going to add here a paper texture, and press this number 2, X delete the texture, and I'm going to add in the third one. Now I got 3 different textures here. Now it is time to set up our scene. So I'm going on the front view and going to turn our 3 pages 90 degrees, rotate Z 90, going to front view and scale them up. And from this point, it is all about camera placement and how would you like them papers to look at here. Yeah, maybe something like this. Now I need to add an HDRI and check out the render. Adding an HDRI, I'm going to the world panel and I'm going to Shift A, search environment texture. The environment textures you can find from HD Haven. Now I'm going to add in an HDRI that I also used for my globe, just dragging it in and changing this environment texture into the lonely road. I got it from HDRI Haven. Now it looks like this. Maybe I will lower its strength a bit, because it's probably too strong, but I'm going to see the render first. And this is how my magnifying glass looks like. Maybe going to lower the value a bit. And also I didn't like the shadow which it gave, so I actually just rotated my HDRI so the shadow just fell right into this magnifying glass. I'm going to select this texture, pressing Ctrl T, and now I can rotate my HDRI something like this, so the shadow actually just falls right under the magnifying glass. So yeah, I was actually hiding it like this. You can always select the way you like it. The shadow shouldn't be hidden maybe always, but I like the way. And now we see that it magnifies. I still think the bump map is a bit too strong, and overall it's too light. But we can always change it later, like lower the intensity or make our papers more dirty. Like, let's go back to the object. I can always make them more dirty, lower the bump map value. It's still too high for me. And we can always make this paper dirtier, or you can always add here a four-dimensional noise, so you can actually control it like this. Something like this. Now, I'm just going to add in some shots in the compositor to make it a bit darker overall, and maybe just add some kind of vignette. So I'm going to the compositing tab, going to click use nodes, and I'm going to give my image a quick render by pressing F12. I think my papers were too shiny, so I'm going to crank up the roughness on these papers so they're going to look more yellowish, and I'm also going to play around with color ramps a bit so I get these stains come out more clearly. If it gets too yellow, you can always change the colors by adding in RGB curves, and you can play around with, do you want it to be darker or lighter? Sorry, I added it in the wrong place. I wanted to add it on the top part here. So you can change the paper's colors. And the same goes with all papers. I'm going to crank up the roughness, adding in RGB curves. Make them more dirty. And the last paper as well. I'm going to crank up the roughness. Now it looks a bit better. So I'm going to give it a new render. Going to the compositing and F12 again. When I'm done rendering, I click on this backdrop icon there, so I get this image here. Go to Ctrl Shift and click on this node, so I get a viewer, and where are you? Then come to the View tab and click Fit. Then your image is going to fit in the scene. Now I want to add a vignette. How to do it? First, I'm going to need a box mask, and I have to blur it afterwards. So I'm going to add in the blur. I can already connect them down, and I'm going to look only how my blurred box mask looks like. Going to add in some values so I know how big my box mask will be. Something like this. And the blur doesn't work at the moment because we haven't given the pixels, how many pixels we want to blur it. I'm going to put in the number like 300. And now we see how our blur works. Maybe if you like, you can lower these values or put them up, but be careful, the waiting time is here. If we want to add the image and our blur together, we're going to use a node called alpha over, Shift A, alpha over, put it there. And I'm going to use this as a mask. That's why I'm putting it into the vector, and I want to give the color of our vignette like this, and Let me see our last node, Ctrl Shift click. Now it is inverted, so I'm just going to take this one and click it there and add in a color here. Or maybe you just like the black vignette, then you can add it in as a black one. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.